Okay, I want to tie together three threads in this hour and set this out for your consideration and get your thoughts on it. The theme, and I'll tell you in advance what the three threads are. Number one, why is Dick Cheney all so chatty all of a sudden? Number two, the ACLU and the Electronic Freedom Foundation have joined in condemning a Wisconsin Supreme Court decision which, on the one hand, said that police can put a GPS device on your car and track you wherever you go, anytime, 24/7, for the rest of your life if they want, without a warrant. Number one. And number two, at the same time, that same Supreme Court said that they were troubled by their own decision and encouraged the legislature to pass a law to prevent this practice. But they ruled that it was constitutional because essentially what's going on here is that the GPS device on the car, since the car was driving in public places, the GPS device on the car was really nothing more than the electronic equivalent of a police officer following somebody, which a police officer can do without a warrant. In fact, they do it all the time. You drive around in cars looking for people who look like they're drunk or speeding or whatever. You don't need a warrant to do that. So the logic of the Wisconsin Supreme Court was this is monitoring behavior in public, and therefore, and it's really an extension of the same logic that the British have used to put spy cameras on every single corner in the country. The British are the most observed people in the world. On average, if you live in London, you are photographed 35 times, more than 35 times every day. So it's this 1984 surveillance society, and the Electronic Frontier Foundation and the ACLU of the National Capital Area are saying, no, this is wrong. There has to be a point at which we say that even in the public, even out in public, there has to be a point at which we say, enough Big Brother already. Using technology to extend the metaphor of a single police officer observing somebody. They say, well, we'll put, 1,000 or 100,000 video cameras out and we'll watch everybody's every move. The same as if we had 1,000 police officers on all the corners. I'm sorry. Yeah, 1,000 police officers, okay, we can, well, not okay, but, I mean, that was what the founders intended. But 1,000 video cameras? See, where this gets extended is, well, we're listening in on your phone conversations. Remember when George W. Bush was listening in on our phone conversations and was listening in on the phone conversations of our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan? And they were listening, the NSA guys were listening in on soldiers talking to their wives back home, talking sex talk with each other, which is entirely reasonable and appropriate. In fact, probably a good and healthy thing for a soldier off, out of the country talking to his wife about, intimate stuff, right? Hey, honey. I'm not going to do it, but you get the point. I mean, I think this is, but the guys at the NSA, they were recording these things and passing them around like jokes to their buddies. And, well, the argument is, well, this could have been a public conversation. It's the same, people talking on the street corner, police officer can stand there and listen in. Why can't we listen to a phone conversation? I mean, this is where this thing goes. But there's a larger issue here. And let me take it back to this story. I got this thing in email and a link to it, and I went to this. It's the Balkanization blog, and which is a fascinating blog. Balkanization, an unanticipated consequence of John M. Balkan. And here's the article. Newsflash. Taliban waterboards captured U.S. soldiers, claims not torture. According to reports out of Kabul, the Taliban announced that they have waterboarded 3 U.S. soldiers taken prisoner. The Taliban commander asserted that waterboarding is not torture and does not violate the Geneva Convention. He assured everyone that a medical officer monitored all waterboarding sessions to ensure that no permanent damage was done to the soldiers. In addition, he said they were careful to follow the directions on waterboarding in a SEER training manual they found posted on the Internet. In support of his assertion that waterboarding is not torture, the Taliban commander cited legal analysis produced by the Office of Legal Counsel of the U.S. Department of Justice. He pointed out that the authors of this legal analysis are now a respected federal judge on the second highest court in America and a professor at a top American law school. The Taliban commander also referred to a careful legal analysis of a distinguished professor of law who concluded that waterboarding is not torture because U.S. trainers did it to their own troops, quote, hundreds and hundreds of times, end quote. Now, this is not a real news story, but what's so creepy about it is that it could be. Now, how do these three things tie together? The Electronic Frontier Foundation and the ACLU saying GPS tracking is wrong. The faux but entirely believable story that the Taliban has waterboarded captive American soldiers and is claiming we're not the bad guys here. We're not doing anything wrong. And Dick Cheney running around saying, be afraid, be very afraid. Talking about there's going to be another hit in America. Of course, there's a viral email going around that's quoting an Israeli security specialist. Snopes has debunked it somewhat, suggesting that there will be another hit on the United States. It won't be on an airplane. That would be stupid. They've already figured out that, well, the cockpit doors are hardened. I mean, back in the 70s, when we were having planes hijacked here in the United States and taken down to Cuba, the federal government tried to pass legislation. A number of, both Republicans and Democrats got together on this and tried to pass legislation to require airlines to do what El Al, the Israeli airline, was already doing. And a number of European airlines were already doing, which is having hardened cockpit doors so that nobody could hijack the plane. And the airline said, you know how much those hardened doors cost? You're talking about, $5, $10, $15, $20,000 an airplane to put in a really secure door. You add all the airplanes we've got in our fleet, that'd be millions of dollars. We'd have to cut back on our executive payroll. Our CEOs, instead of making $400 million a year, would have to make $395 million. We can't do that. And so they didn't. The legislation was effectively shot down. So anyhow, now we've got hardened cockpit doors, just like El Al does. They're not going to hijack a plane. Instead, this viral email is suggesting, and again, it's an urban legend, just like the story about the Taliban waterboarding a U.S. soldier. But the point is suggesting that it's going to be, they're going to a suicide bombing in a major U.S. city or Disneyland or something like that, some big public place. And the problem is one of trust of government. This even ties into the hysterical meme about Social Security this morning. The reason why the founders put the Fourth Amendment into the Constitution, aside from it being, the right thing to do, the right and appropriate thing to do, the reason why they put in the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched or the persons or things to be seized. The reason that's there, and the reason why it's so important to follow that, the reason why it's so important not to allow police departments to put GPS devices on cars and track us without a warrant, the reason why it's so important that Dick Cheney be called out on trying to terrorize America, saying the Obama administration is not making us safer. The reason why we need to call out the previous is because if we don't trust our government, then we cannot have a civil society. This is the essence of the entire thing. That a society, a culture, a nation that does not trust its government is a nation that is in chaos, is a nation that will not have a civil society over time. And so a government must behave in a way worthy of the trust of its citizens, which means that it doesn't torture people, which means that its senior officials don't run around and tell people that, the sky is going to fall and everybody else is evil and, all this kind of stuff, and which means that it doesn't attach GPS devices to our cars, at least not without a search warrant. It's about trusting government. Now, tell me I'm wrong or I'm missing something here. I see a consistent thread running through all of this. You've got the Cheneys of the world who don't want us to trust government, and the rest of us who believe in the American way.